The hiss of steam echoed through the belly of Enslaved 9 as Kalen Voss pressed his back against the rusted bulkhead, heart thumping. Sparks danced from a faulty cable above, briefly lighting the narrow maintenance shaft. He waited, counted the slow seconds, then slid open the panel and slipped inside the shadows. Outside on the broadcast towers, a dozen human corpses swung in unison. Public executions. A reminder. They tried to run. Kalen kept walking. Enslaved 9, an orbital slave hub in the shadow of Jupiter, stank of oil, metal, and despair. Above ground, aliens in black armor patrolled streets like clockwork. Below, in the guts of the station, humans scavenged, traded, and pretended not to dream. Kalen ducked into an abandoned drone bay. He'd rigged it with sound dampeners and false heat signatures. Enough to hide a secret. He knelt beside the metal crate and pried it open. Inside, cradled in foam and scrap, sat the chip, obsidian black, coin-sized, etched with pre-conquest human code. Illegal. Forgotten. Alive. He held his breath and clicked it into the interface rig. The machine whined. Then a voice. Kalen Voss. Human male. Match confirmed. Activating Eidolon subprocess. A shimmer of light flickered on the wall, not a face, but a shifting halo of code. Eidolon, Kalen whispered. You still work? Affirmative. Partial integrity. Temporal mismatch, 300 years. Query, what remains of the human directive? Nothing, he said. We lost. Silence stretched. The AI didn't respond immediately. Then, correction. You survived. That is unexpected. Kalen leaned back, rubbing his hands over his face. The others, those bodies they hung, wanted out. Same as my parents. Same as everyone. But we've been under syndicate boots so long, hope's just a story we tell kids. Eidolon pulsed. Your tone indicates trauma. Purpose of interface? Kalen looked up, eyes hardened. You carry fragments of Project Ascendancy, right? The failsafe. Affirmative. Fragmented schema. Inert until linked with core archive. He exhaled sharply. There it was, the ghost of a dead resistance. A whisper from Earth's last stand. Can you finish it? Not alone. Core integration required. Estimated success probability, 0.03%. Kalen laughed, bitter. Hell of a number. Probability increases with rebellion network activity. Kalen stood. There is no rebellion. There will be. The AI's certainty sent a chill through him. Above ground, Over-Commander Vorik stood on the observation deck of the Dominion-class dreadnought Hegemony Prime, watching the human corpses twist in artificial wind. Savages, he muttered. His adjutant, a thin Saurian with pale eyes, clicked nervously. Surveillance intercept detected unauthorized neural signature. Possible AI resonance. Vorik stiffened. Where? Enslaved 9. Human sector. Signal was masked briefly. Level 7 encryption. Vorik turned slowly. Human-made? Yes, Over-Commander. Impossible. He clenched a clawed hand. They lost the war centuries ago. Their technology was dismantled. The adjutant hesitated. Perhaps not all. Vorik's lip curled. Deploy a hunter team. Quietly. I want that signal traced. If they've uncovered anything from before the fall. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Back underground, Kalen crouched beside Mira in the recycler corridor. She handed him a med patch for his bruised ribs, courtesy of a syndicate enforcer who'd caught him stealing fuses. You're gonna get spaced one day, she said, voice low. Not today. He winced, pressing the patch to his side. Mira was one of the few who hadn't given up. An engineer turned medic, she kept people patched up, machines running, and secrets close. You found something, she said, not asking. I found someone, Kalen said. AI. Human-made. From the fall era. Myra's eyes widened. No. That tech is buried, gone. We tried to find it for years. Not gone. Hiding. Waiting. She leaned in. What does it want? Kaylin hesitated. To finish what we started. Mira looked away. We don't have fighters. We don't have ships. We barely have food. Project Ascendancy wasn't about brute force, Kaylin said. It was about overriding the neural command net. Disabling their link. If it works, we shut them down. And if it fries every brain on this station? Kaylin didn't answer. He didn't know. That night, while others slept, he returned to the drone bay. Eidolon hovered above the terminal like a flicker of memory. You are afraid. Of course I'm afraid. That is good. Fear sharpens intent. But action defines outcome. Kaylin nodded slowly. We'll need allies. Tools. Timing. I can guide. But exposure risks syndicate response. I'll handle that. They will come. Kaylin looked at the chip glowing in the dark. Let them. Outside, in the syndicate command spire, the hunter team locked onto the signals trail. Silent. Precise. Zerinth 9 didn't know it yet, but history had shifted. The ghost of a lost humanity had spoken. And something ancient was waking up. The syndicate hunter team moved like shadows, no boots, no voices, just the hum of cloaked armor cutting through the sleeping colony. 6 enforcers, genetically engineered for silence, followed the AI's signature down into Zerinth 9's underbelly. By the time they found the drone bay, it was empty. Eidolon had warned Kaylin 2 minutes earlier. Kaylin crouched behind Myra's workbench in the machine shop, breathing through his nose to slow his heartbeat. Eidolon flickered across the embedded screen, stripped down to a soft pulse. Myra's eyes darted to the door. They'll scan this place, she whispered. Even scrubbers don't miss neural residue. We won't be here when they do, Kaylin replied. But we need to move now. Myra wiped her hands on a rag. You have a plan? Yeah. Stay alive. Find the others. And make them believe this isn't suicide. In the deep corridors of Subsector J, human resistance wasn't a uniform. It was a look, a word, a refusal to kneel. Kaylin met with them one by one. Not leaders, there weren't any, but figures who still carried fire behind their eyes. There was Bran, the power grid saboteur with grease under every nail. Eula, the signal hacker who could mask movement for 5 seconds, enough time to live or die. And Sadine, Myra's brother, who'd lost a lung in the fusion riots but still smuggled tools through the food lines. I heard what you're playing with, Bran said, arms crossed. Kaylin stayed still. Then you know what it means. It means death. It means choice, Kaylin countered. You've been surviving. That's not the same as living. Eula leaned forward. You want us to follow a ghost. A broken AI from a world we never knew. She's not broken, Kaylin said. And she's not a ghost. She's the last piece of what we were before we were leashed. He laid the interface rig on the crate between them. Eidolon pulsed into view, a pale shimmer of code in the dim room. I offer data. Not miracles. But knowledge is revolution's first breath. The silence that followed was heavy. Sadine finally broke it. If we do this, there's no going back. There's nothing left to go back to, Mira said quietly. They agreed, reluctantly, grimly. Not because they believed, but because they were tired of being afraid. Hours later, Kaylin sat alone with Eidolon in the server alcove. Pipes groaned above, leaking mist into the air. The colony was old, patched, wounded like everything else. Why now? He asked the AI. Why wake up after centuries? Because someone asked me to. Kaylin blinked. You mean me? No. Before. A scientist during the fall. She embedded a conditional trigger. Said if a human finds you again and still wants to fight, help them. That's all? Sometimes survival is a question. You answered it. Kaylin didn't know what to say. For a second, he just watched the AI's pulses fade and return. I need to know what ascendancy does. All of it. It was designed to bypass the neural dampeners embedded in Syndicate's slave species. A cascading override of control code. Biological freedom through forced systemic collapse. Kalen nodded slowly. Sounds like fire. No. Fire is blind. This is precise. But incomplete. I require access to the core. The mothership, he murmured. Yes. The command architecture is housed in a living archive aboard Hegemony Prime. Without it, ascendancy is a spark with no kindling. Kalen's jaw tightened. That's suicide. It may be. But failure guarantees extinction. At the same moment, in the orbiting dreadnought's vault chamber, Over-Commander Vorik stared at the surveillance logs. This signature again. He gestured at the pulse spike. His adjutant shifted uneasily. It matches pre-conquest parameters. Definitely human-coded. Vorik's jaw clicked. They have no right to evolve beyond their station. What should we do? He stared out the viewport. Earth hung below, silent, pillaged, beaten. Let them run. Let them gather. When they believe they've won something, crush them. Back in the depths of Zenith 9, Mira paced the floor of her clinic. Kalen sat beside her, turning a rusted gear in his fingers. We need a delivery system, she said. Something that can get Eidolon to the mothership without being flagged before upload. Kalen looked up. You have something? Half of a spinal interface. Black market medtech. You need to jack in. Run her through your brain. That's insane. It's what we have. Kalen went quiet. He thought of the corpses swinging in the cold. Of his father's broken hand holding a rebellion manifesto, unread and blood-soaked. Of his mother's last words, don't forget who you are. He looked at Mira. Let's do it. She frowned. You don't even know what it'll do to you. I don't care. If this works, we shut them down. If it fails, your brain melts out your ears. He smirked. Then aim for clean floors. Later, as Mira fitted the interface behind Kalen's ear, Eidolon dimmed its glow. You may not survive this synchronization. I'm not planning on dying, Kalen said through gritted teeth. I'm planning on winning. The pain hit like a knife to the skull, not sharp, but deep. Mira steadied him as his eyes rolled back. Circuits stitched into bone. Data fed through his spine like lightning. And then silence. When Kalen opened his eyes, Eidolon was no longer on the screen. She was in his mind. Integration complete, she said softly. We are aligned. He gasped, shuddering. That was awful. That was birth. As they tested his neural reflexes, an emergency pulse echoed through the colony, a distress beacon from a rebel contact point. Kalen and Mira ran to the site. Smoke. Blood. Bran dead, eyes wide. Eula missing. Vorik had made his first move. The others looked at Kalen. Not as a scavenger. Not as a mechanic. As something else. What now? Sadim asked. Kalen looked at the fire still burning behind him. The price had been paid. No, he said. We go to war. Kalen stood before a dying projector, the faint blue light cutting through the underground chamber's dust-choked air. Around him, faces weathered by decades of subjugation leaned in, silent, uncertain. Some were mechanics, others medics, a few just survivors. All of them had one thing left, a choice. He pointed to the flickering schematic of Hegemony Prime, the Syndicate's orbital command ship. We hit the core here, he said, tapping the heart of the image. The neural matrix links all slave systems across the colonies. If we can plug Eidolon in, ascendancy activates. Bran second, a wiry tech named COR, scoffed. That ship is a fortress. No vessel gets close without being atomized. We're not flying a ship, Mira said. We're getting smuggled inside. How? Kalen stepped forward. Through the slave cargo manifest. Vorik's rotating earthbound laborers up to the ship for conditioning. Mira and I get inserted with a batch. Sadim feeds a false manifest through his contact in admin block 3. It's suicide. Cor muttered. No, Kalen said calmly. It's worse than that. It's unfair. That's why it might work. Later, in the back room of Myra's clinic, Sadim tapped the screen displaying colony movement logs. You've got a 10-minute blackout window, he said. Syndicate scans reroute during orbital realignment. That's the only moment their eyes are off the cargo. Kalen nodded, his pulse steady. That's all we need. He looked to Mira, who was sealing up the neural interface on his neck with a layer of synth skin. You sure you're ready? She asked. He didn't answer. He simply handed her a small data shard. What's this? If I don't come back, this is everything Eidolon showed me: schematics, command overrides, communication keys. Get it to someone who can finish the job. Mira took it silently. That was the real goodbye. Inside Kalen's mind, Eidolon stirred. Are you certain? No, he thought. But certainty's for the dead. Good. Doubt keeps your mind sharp. As they walked toward the cargo line, Eidolon whispered instructions, coordinates, frequencies, the timing for the neural sync cascade. Each detail etched itself into Kalen's memory like fire across dry grass. Then the cages came into view. Humans filed into containment pods like livestock. Some looked up, hollow-eyed. Others didn't bother. Guards barked orders in syndicate tongue. Mira squeezed Kalen's hand once, then dropped it, assuming her place. The pod sealed with a hiss. Darkness. Then movement. Then silence. When the pod opened, Kalen was on Hegemony Prime. The air was dry, filtered, sterile. No sound but the click of boots and hum of security drones. The guards spoke and clipped, metallic language, herding prisoners into corridors. Kalen and Mira were directed left, toward the medical exam units. Phase 1. Eidolon was quiet inside him, waiting. Dormant until the signal came. Mira reached for a scalpel from a nearby tray without moving her body, just her fingers. She slipped it into her sleeve. They waited. At 0900 station time, the alignment began. The network pulse rerouted for 12 minutes, Vorac's standard orbital ritual. A habit. A vulnerability. Kalen reached the maintenance hatch first, shoved a guard into a wall, and dropped him with a pipe to the skull. Mira was already moving, scalpel across another's throat, clean and silent. Blood sprayed the wall. They ran. Inside the central core chamber, Vorac reviewed tactical simulations. The screen glitched, half a second. Nothing more. System lag? He asked. The technician shook his head. Gravity adjustment during realignment. All stable. But Vorac felt it, something shifting beneath the system's skin. A ripple. He ordered a lockdown of the slave wing. Too late. Kalen and Mira reached the core doors just as alarms screamed to life. Behind them, syndicate boots thundered. Kalen dropped to one knee, connected the neural uplink, and slammed his fist into the release valve. Steel groaned. The door opened. Inside, light bled from the ceiling in pale blue ribbons. Floating at the center was the archive, a pulsing orb of biodigital memory, suspended in a containment field. Eidolon flared to life within Kalen's vision. This is it. Connect me now. Kalen sprinted forward, dodged a plasma bolt from a pursuing guard, and dove into the interface port. Sparks burst as he slammed the uplink in. Screams filled his ears, not physical, not audible. Thoughts. Millions of them. Slave minds bound across colonies suddenly listening. Launching ascendancy. Kalen fell to his knees, convulsing. Mira held the entrance, firing a stolen rifle, pinning down syndicate reinforcements. Kalen's voice trembled. It's too much. I can't hold it. You don't have to. We will. Eidolon split, branched, unfolded within his mind. Thought became code. Pain became light. And then, stillness. A breath. And everywhere, control broke. Across colonies, slaves collapsed mid-task. Neural dampeners blinked and died. Eyes opened, truly opened, for the first time in generations. The link was severed. In the core chamber, Vorik arrived as the last wave of light faded from the orb. Kalen stood, trembling but alive. Vorik drew his weapon. You don't understand what you've done. Kalen turned slowly. I think I do. He raised his arm. The interface glowed. Vorik fired. But his weapon fizzled. Every piece of Syndicate tech in the room was dead. You built an empire on silence, Kalen said. But now they can hear each other. Vorik charged. Mira fired. The shot ripped through his neck. The Overcommander fell, twitching, lifeless. Kalen slumped to the floor. Eidolon, now fading, spoke one last time. You were afraid. And you still acted. That is the shape of courage. Then silence. The AI was gone. But her echo remained, in every freed mind now stirring under strange skies. Zyrinth 9 had never known silence. Not real silence. Now it echoed. No alarms. No barking orders. No Syndicate patrols pacing steel corridors. Just the creak of metal and the low, uncertain murmur of free voices rediscovering their weight. Kalen Voss stood at the edge of the docking bay, staring out into the black. His limbs trembled, not from pain, but from exhaustion. The neural interface in his spine no longer hummed. Eidolon was gone. Burned out during the cascade. But her work remained. Behind him, the colony stirred like something waking up for the first time. Still breathing? Mira asked, stepping beside him. Barely. She passed him a cracked water vial. Vitals are stabilizing. Whatever hit you in the core, it didn't kill your brain, miraculously. I think she protected me. Kalen took a sip. Right at the end. Then she kept her promise. Kalen nodded. Yeah. News traveled fast through the colonies, carried by whispered radio, blinking signal lights, and liberated minds. On Mars, the slave pits collapsed into chaos as enforcers lost connection with their command systems. On Europa, deep-sea mining units went still, and workers emerged from flooded tunnels to find no masters watching. On Earth, long-abandoned bunkers lit up with new transmissions. Entire networks of survivors realized they were not alone. Everywhere, humans looked up and felt the silence of Syndicate control. For the first time in 3 centuries, their thoughts were their own. But not all was won. In the ashes of Hegemony Prime, the surviving Syndicate fleet regrouped. Fragmented and raged, leaderless, but not dead. Dreadships still hung in orbit. Not all systems had failed. They would retaliate. Inside the colony's war room, an old hydrothermal regulation chamber hastily converted into a command center. Kalen stood over the central table as Sadim laid out what little they had. 17 colonies just sent confirmation. They've got comms, but no heavy weapons. We can coordinate, but we can't hold if the fleet comes down on us. How long until they strike? Kalen asked. Could be hours. A day at most. Mira folded her arms. We can't fight ships like Hegemony Prime. Even with their control net broken, they've still got plasma cores, drones, orbital cannons. Then we don't fight them like soldiers, Kalen said. We fight like what we are. Survivors. Engineers. Hackers. Scavengers. Sadim raised an eyebrow. You want us to improvise our way out of a galactic fleet? I want to remind them what they never understood about us, Kalen said quietly. We build. We adapt. And when you back us into a corner, we bite. The colony transformed overnight. Workshops became weapons labs. Water reclamation pumps rerouted to drive electromagnetic disruptors. Old cargo drones were rigged with explosive cores and remote triggers. Each rebel team took one ship in the fleet. They'd never overpower them head-on, but if they could disable just enough, maybe the rest would break formation. It wasn't war. It was desperation sharpened into strategy. When the Syndicate fleet arrived, the sky turned red with burned trails. They expected panic. Collapse. Surrender. Instead, the first cruiser lost navigation when a hacked mining beacon fed it false coordinates, sending it spiraling into the upper atmosphere. The second was hit with a burst from a jerry-rigged EMP pulse, disabling its shielding and leaving it to be gutted by drone bombs packed with scrap metal and stolen fission cells. Kalen stood on the upper deck, watching one dreadnought dip from orbit, fire blooming from its engine. It wasn't enough. 4 more ships remained. Targeting arrays just locked on, Sadim said. They're charging. Kalen activated the manual signal relay. Patch me into all colonies. A brief pause. Then, green light. He stepped forward. To anyone still listening, this is Kalen Voss of Zyrinth 9. The time for hiding is over. We struck first. Now we strike together. Static. Then voices. Dozens. Hundreds. I hear you. We're ready. Let's show them who we are. Across the system, the scattered colonies responded. Improvised missiles. Repurposed transmitters. Electronic warfare born from starvation and genius. The remaining syndicate ships blinked in and out of communication. Their formations collapsed. Orders couldn't reach their crews. Targeting systems failed. And then, one by one, they began to fall. Not because humans had better weapons, but because they had nothing left to lose. By dawn, the syndicate fleet was gone, crippled, scattered, or crashed into dead moons. Kalen sat alone on the outer ring, legs hanging over the edge. The stars above looked clearer now. Mira joined him, her shoulder brushing his. They'll come back one day, she said. The syndicate. Or something worse. I know. She smiled faintly. So what now? He looked toward Earth. Now we rebuild. In the weeks that followed, a council of colonies formed. Not a government, no one trusted that yet, but a bond. Shared resources. Open channels. A pledge, never again. Kalen refused a title. He didn't want to lead. He wanted to walk among those who had once believed freedom was a lie, and show them it had a name again. He often spoke to the stars, where Eidolon had once whispered. She didn't answer anymore. But sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he could still feel the warmth of her code, the precision of her presence. Not as a machine, but as a companion. A spark lit centuries ago, now passed on. They never found Vorik's body. Some thought he escaped. Others swore he died in the core. Kalen didn't care. The gods had fallen. Not with a roar, but with a whisper carried by a boy who dared to say no.